So every December, someone shows up claiming Christmas is just a stolen pagan festival. But is that actually true? Or is it one of the biggest, dumbest historical myths ever told? Stick around and find out.
Coming from the wild, from the rain and the stone, where the wind has no name and the traveler's alone. There's warmth in the fire and truth in the tale of the watcher who walks where the bold-hearted fail.
He carries no sword, yet the darkness gives way to the lantern he lifts at the end of the day. He stands on the watchtower, still and unswayed, where the lost find a path through the fog and the fray. Pilgrims Grey, oh steward of the lands, you carry the light in your weather-worn hands. A tale at the heart, a guide through the night. You open the gate between the wrong and the right.
Yes, sir, the wrong and the right. So welcome back, folks, fellow travelers, to the Pilgrims Grey Chronicles. This time of year, the same tired claims start making the rounds. We all know it. Christmas was pagan. Jesus wasn't born in December. The church stole ancient festivals. Nimrod invented Christmas trees. And on and on and on it goes. And it already started this year when I read a post shared by our good friend, Derek Gilbert. And it reminded me of something, not that he was poo-pooing it, but he was defending Christmas. It reminded me of something I've seen every December without fail. People who absolutely seem to love to poop on Christmas. Folks who seem determined to ruin the season with half-truths, mistranslations, YouTube mythology, and recycled memes that fall apart the moment you actually look at the evidence. So I thought, what better time than right now to address this, right? To break down the facts before the flood of bad history rolls in and steals the joy out of the season for believers who simply want to celebrate the birth of their King and their God. So this episode isn't necessarily about arguing for December 25th. I do some of that, but it's about demolishing the myths that attack it. So we're going to address where these claims come from, why they spread, what the historical record actually says, and why the story is far more grounded in early Christian practice than any pagan festival you've ever heard of. So grab your cloak, step inside the Pilgrims Grey Inn, warm yourself by the fire, and let's talk about the truth behind Christmas before the mythbusters, who never check their sources, seemingly, show up to ruin the holiday for the rest of us. All right? Let's do this. And to let you know, this is going to be a episode that I've done in the past. So I apologize for some of the audio. I tried to improve it as best I could by EQing it. But I spent about an hour going into the Christmas record. And hopefully you will enjoy it. I can't think of a better time to do it than now, just before the season really starts banging off, right around Thanksgiving. So, consider this your sword and shield in preparation for what's coming, because it happens every year. So, in fact, we went over to visit my mom tonight, and she had a magazine out where somebody was equating it to, how did this guy put it? He's from, some offshoot of the Armstrongism, Worldwide Church of God, I think. I mean, he wrote an article and basically implied that to celebrate Christmas is like dating, replacing your wife or dating somebody else. I don't know. I can't even remember exactly how he put it. I just felt it was so absurd. But I'm going to look that article up, and I will probably even maybe do an episode closer to Christmas on it, because I just, if we don't stand up to this kind of stuff, it just lingers and festers out there like a pond of stagnant water growing mosquitoes. So, let's do it. Let's say our part and stand up and not just ignore it and roll our eyes, because if we don't do anything, then this kind of stuff breeds and it needs to be put down. Just like, Stitchins by Michael Heiser did with Stitchin's work. Stitchin's got some stuff right, but some of the stuff that he was promoting was completely inaccurate, and Michael Heiser dealt with it, and I thought he dealt with it very nicely and fairly. Anyway, without further ado, let's get on with the show. Yes, Christmas time. The lights are twinkling, trees are sparkling, there's a smell of cookies in the air, and once again, the internet is ablaze with debates about whether Christmas is a Christian celebration, a pagan knockoff, or some unholy mix of the two. It's like clockwork, right? I mean, every December, we are bombarded with posts, videos, and memes, including my video right now, I guess, claiming that Christians or Christmas is really just Saturnalia with a new paint job or conspiracy by Constantine to sneak paganism into the church. And if that wasn't enough, some folks go full the two Babylons on us, and they insist that our beloved Christmas tree is actually a shrine to Nimrod, and our stockings are covert odes to Baal. Now, apparently that guy's got some strong PR if he managed to turn into a Yule log. But here's the thing about these claims, folks. They're not just overblown, that they're totally wrong. Like, spectacularly wrong. And today, we are going to clear the air and set the record straight. Yes, we're going to dive into the history of Christmas, its traditions, and drumroll. I know, terrible. Whether Jesus was actually born on December 25th. And spoiler alert, there's a lot more evidence for that date than you're probably being told, even if we can't say it's 100% certain. So now, don't worry, this isn't going to be a finger-wagging lecture. Nope. No, we're just here to have fun while you load up with all the facts. And so the next time someone tries to guilt trip you about putting up a Christmas tree, you'll have the historical receipts to say, actually, right? So grab some hot cocoa or just get cozy and let's dive into the real story of Christmas, minus the myths, the pagan paranoia, and the bad history, because Christmas, it's more than Christian than you even think. And so let's get started, right? So part one, the myth of pagan origins. So, all right. Let's start with a big, shiny ornament in the room, the claim that Christmas is just really a recycled pagan holiday. You've probably heard it before, maybe even from a friend or a meme with way too many exclamation points, telling you that you're a horrible person or you're an idiot as a Christian for celebrating this holiday. Anyway, the idea is that early Christians trying to convert those party-hard pagans slapped Jesus' name on festivals like Saturnalia or Sol Invictus and called it a day, It sounds scandalous, doesn't it? Well, it's also completely inaccurate. So let's break it down, starting with Saturnalia. This was a Roman festival held in December that involved feasting, gift-giving, and, well, a lot of drunken shenanigans. Yeah, it happened in December, but here's the catch. Saturnalia ended on December 23rd, not the 25th. So unless the early Christians were somehow time travelers with a penchant for hopping onto the tail end of pagan partiers, that one's really kind of a stretch. So let's move on to Sol Invictus, the so-called birthday of the unconquered sun. Yeah, it sounds impressive, right? Except for one tiny detail. The first recorded celebration of Sol Invictus on December 25th didn't happen until 274 AD. When Emperor Aurelian established it as a state holiday. Meanwhile, Christians were already connecting December 25th to Jesus' birthday decades earlier. It's kind of a little awkward for the copycat theory, don't you think? And then there's the wild Nimrod theory. I don't know if you've heard this one, but this one's for the conspiracy enthusiasts. Supposedly, Christmas is really a secret celebration of Nimrod, the guy from the Bible, who built the Tower of Babel to get back into heaven or create a portal. Well, the theory goes that Nimrod became a sun god. his wife, Semiramis, declared herself a goddess, and their son Tammuz was a resurrected version of Nimrod. Oh, and somehow the Yule log and Christmas tree are tied into this family drama. Now here's the problem. There is zero historical evidence that Nimrod was ever worshipped as a god, let alone turned into a Yule log. And Semiramis, well, she was an actual queen who lived about 2,300 years after Nimrod. So unless time travel was a thing in ancient Mesopotamia, that theory really doesn't hold up either. So now, where did these myths come from? Well, a lot of it traces back to Alexander, I think it's pronounced Hislops, The Two Babylons. It was a book from the 19th century that thoroughly debunked by historians. Hislop essentially took every ancient god and goddess he could find, threw them into a blender, and came up with, well, pretty much a smoothie of bad scholarship. It's creative, but accurate? No. Not even close. So let's recap. Saturnalia ended on December 23rd. Sol Invictus showed up late to the party in 274 AD, and Nimrod as a sun god. Well, that's ancient history fan fiction at best. The idea that Christmas is rooted in paganism falls apart faster than a cheap tree stand. Have you ever dealt with one of those? I have. They suck. But if Christmas didn't come from these pagan festivals, then where did it come from? Well, hold that thought, because we're about to dig into some real history in part 2. Cleared out the myths to some degree. Let's talk about where the day really comes from. Spoiler, it has a lot less to do with paganism and a lot more to do with theology, tradition, and some ancient Jewish math. Oh, and it starts way earlier than most people realize. So let's begin with the earliest record we have, which is in 202 AD. Yes, 202 AD. Over 70 years before Sol Invictus was even a thing. Hippolytus of Rome wrote in the commentary on Daniel that Jesus was born on December the 25th. He even got pretty specific, stating it was 8 days before the calends of January, which pretty much translates to you as, you guessed it, December the 25th. So when somebody tells you Christmas was invented in the 4th century to hijack pagan holidays, you can confidently say, actually, Christians were already connecting this date to Jesus decades earlier. But so where did Hippolytus and the other Christians get this date? It wasn't random, and it definitely wasn't borrowed from pagans. Well, the answer lies in a fascinating bit of theological reasoning. You see, early Christians believed in something called the integral year, an ancient Jewish tradition that said prophets died on the same day they were conceived. It's not in the Bible, I get it, but it was a widely held belief at the time. Now, using that tradition, early Christians calculated that Jesus died on March 25th, the date of the crucifixion, and they reasoned that his life must have started on the same day, which means he was conceived on March 25th. Fast forward exactly 9 months, because God's timing is perfect, and you land on December 25th for his birth. So now you might be thinking, yeah, but isn't it still possible they just picked that date to compete with pagan celebrations? Well, I know at one time I used to kind of think that and didn't care, but it's not likely. For starters, there's no evidence of any major pagan festival on December 25th before Christianity. The earliest mention of Sol Invictus even being celebrated on that day comes from Emperor Aurelian in 274 AD, decades after the Christians were already commemorating Jesus' birth. In fact, some scholars argue that Aurelian picked the December 25th day because Christians had already claimed it. A little bit of a pagan counter-programming, perhaps? Maybe they're the ones guilty of it? Maybe. And let's not forget that Donatists, a super strict Christian sect in North Africa that celebrated Christmas on December 25th in the early 4th century before Constantine became emperor. Yep, that's right. The so-called paganizing Emperor Constantine had nothing to do with it. The Donatists were so rigid in their belief that they'd rather have eaten nails than adopt a pagan practice. They didn't actually say that. I'm just saying that because I can. But seriously, there's no way they would have done it. And so remember how we talked about Sol Invictus? Well, there's even evidence that it wasn't consistently celebrated on December 25th at all. Collection of Roman writings. I'm probably going to stumble over this because my tongue just doesn't do Latin well, and I've been working all day, and I'm tired. But it's the Inscriptiones Latinae Selectae lists the feast during the reign of Licinius in the early 4th century, not in December, but on November 18th. So even the Sol Invictus connection starts to look a little bit more shaky when you dig into the details. And here's the bottom line. The date of December 25th wasn't just pulled out of a pagan hat. It was rooted in theological calculations. Jewish tradition and early Christian practices. The pagans might have tried to copy the Christians, but the evidence shows it didn't happen. It happened the other way around, really. If you look at the dates, you look at the timing, you look at what's going on there, it really appears that the pagans just slopped it over Christianity because they hated us. But what about the whole Jesus wasn't actually born in December argument? Well, we're going to get to that. In fact, next. But for now, just know that the evidence for December 25th as a Christian celebration is stronger than any claim of pagan origins. I think we've pretty much handled the date of Christmas. Let's dive into some of these traditions. The things that certain folks insist are dripping in paganism: Christmas tree, Santa Claus, mistletoe, and even gift giving. Now, these traditions really, I know a lot of people claim virtually everything that has to do with it is all rooted in paganism, and their claims get pretty wild, and like some of the ones I mentioned earlier, with Nimrod. Anyway, they're really not, and by the end of this, I would think you'll have plenty of reasons to smile at least the next time someone tries to play the Grinch with your celebration. Lots of Christmas Karens out there. So let's start with Santa Claus, the jolly man himself. Contrary to what some might say, Santa isn't a sneaky rebrand of Odin, Saturn, or some other ancient deity. The real Santa Claus is based on St. Nicholas of Myra, a Christian bishop who lived in the 4th century in what's now Turkey. He was famous for his generosity, particularly to the poor, and one legendary story tells of how he secretly provided dowries for 3 poor sisters, saving them from being sold into slavery. It goes something like he threw gold coins through the window and they landed in the socks, or stockings they left out to dry. Does that sound familiar to you? Yeah. And so the tradition began from that, essentially. You hung out your stockings to dry with care and hoped that St. Nick would soon be there. Yeah. So that's the origin of the stockings and Santa's gift-giving, really. But that's not all. Did you know St. Nicholas was also present, or at least in spirit, at the Council of Nicaea, where he allegedly punched the heretic Arius for denying the divinity of Christ? Now, you talk about defending the faith, so next time someone calls Santa pagan, just remind them that he's actually a saint with a reputation of generosity and no-nonsense attitude about theology. That makes me wonder if a punch was hard enough to break his nose. And now, Christmas trees. See, I love Christmas trees. When we first, my wife and I first built our house, I'm pretty sure we left our Christmas tree up for like 2 years straight because it was just so beautiful. We didn't even put one up this year because we've been so busy, but I love Christmas trees. So this tradition often gets attacked as a remnant of tree worship from Druidic or Germanic paganism. But what's the reality? Christmas trees really didn't make their debut for Christmas celebration until somewhere in the late Middle Ages, and they were first used in medieval German plays about Adam and Eve decorated with apples to symbolize the Garden of Eden. And over time, these trees found their way into homes, and where Christians added symbols of Christ, stars, angels, to remind themselves of God's redemptive plan. So unless your tree is adorned with runes and sacrifices and body parts, it's probably pretty much safe to say that you're not engaging in pagan worship. And what about gift giving? Well, the Romans did exchange gifts during Saturnalia, but they didn't invent the concept, for crying out loud. Christian gift giving is rooted in two things: the Magi's gifts to Jesus and the example of St. Nicholas for Christians, giving gifts reflecting God's ultimate gift to humanity, his Son, Jesus Christ. Early Christians embraced this practice as a way to show love and generosity, not as a nod to pagan festivals. I mean, the idea is ridiculous. And then you've got mistletoe, the so-called pagan plant. Yeah, it had significance in Norse and Celtic traditions, but its modern use in Christmas celebrations has nothing to do with it. In fact, mistletoe became popular in Christian homes as a symbol of love and reconciliation. So now, unless you're reciting Norse sagas under the mistletoe, you're probably pretty good to go there. I don't really care about mistletoe. I mean, it seems like it's just an excuse to kiss some boy or girl that you want under the mistletoe, right? So it's really the intent, you know. And like I said, unless you're bowing down to one of these Celtic gods, I just, you know, I don't get the connection. I get the connection. So please don't send comments about how I'm stupid because I don't get the connection. I know the connection. I'm just saying, in your heart, if that is not your heart motive, then you're not connected to it. I don't care what people say. So what about the 12 days of Christmas? Well, this one's often misunderstood, and it's really, well, far from being a fertility ritual. The 12 days refer to the period between Christmas, or the Nativity, and the Epiphany, the visiting of the Magi. Historically, it's been kind of a time of feasting and celebrating the incarnation of Christ. In other words, it's as Christian as it gets, not a fertility ritual. I know there are stories out there. I've seen them. I've read them. But again, what is your intent? What is your heart? That's all you need to know. That's between you and God. You're not committing some act of strange worship in a fertility ritual by singing the song or however you celebrate. It's between you and God. And let's not forget the nativity scene. It ties many of these traditions together. It's a beautiful tradition originated with Saint Francis of Assisi. I say my tongue. It just doesn't want to work. In the 13th century, he wanted to help people visualize the miracle of Christ's birth. And so the nativity scene reminds us that Christmas isn't about presents or parties, but about God stepping into history to save humanity. So we can have a relationship, a restored relationship. That's what it's about. So what's the big takeaway here? Well, most of what we think of as Christian or Christmas traditions either have Christian origins or were given Christ-centered meaning over time. Sure, some of these customs might have roots in older traditions, but their modern forms are undeniably Christian. And honestly, isn't really that the beauty of Christianity? Taking what's commonly broken or misunderstood or tainted and transforming it into something meaningful, good, and redemptive, like our lives, our souls. No. What's wrong with redeeming the holiday? So I say go ahead and hang your stockings, light up your tree, enjoy the season, because when you do, you're celebrating a holiday that's deeply rooted in Christian faith and tradition, no matter what the internet historians might say. So, next up, we're going to tackle the big question: does it even matter when we celebrate Christmas, and how should we approach it as Christians? So let's wrap this up in our final section, but before we do, I would want to unpack a few things, because when I went over this and began writing out my my post here or my YouTube thing, my wife said, you should probably go over some of the verses, that have to deal with this. Go over some of the verses that people commonly use, like the one from Isaiah and some others. So we should probably spend just a little bit of time of the verses that many Karens use. Maybe I shouldn't use the term Karen. Maybe some of you do have good intent, but I don't know. Can't you just celebrate in your heart? You have to go around spoiling everybody's Christmas with the nonsense when you're really not 100% sure that what you're saying is correct or historic because you haven't dug and done your research. I mean, can't somebody just smile, sing a carol, put up their tree, and love God and have a relationship with Jesus without having to hear, oh, you're a pagan. That tree is pagan, and you should set it on fire with your entire house, destroy everything, and start all over with your life because you're clearly worthy of death. I mean, seriously. I mean, I know people don't say that, but I mean, that's how people act at times. It's ridiculous. So, all right. We've covered a bunch of stuff about Santa, trees, traditions, but we need to address that other layer of criticism. People using Bible verses out of context to argue that Christmas has pagan roots. Scripture is powerful, but when it is twisted to fit a narrative, it's just another weapon in the hands of those trying to ruin our Christmas joy. Don't let them. So let's dig into these verses most commonly thrown around and why they don't say what the critics think they say. Jeremiah 10, 1-5. Learn not the way of the heathen. Yeah. It's the famous Christmas trees are pagan passage, one of them. Critics love to point out Jeremiah, where the prophet warns Israel about cutting down trees, decorating them with silver and gold, and worshiping them. Sounds pretty damning and hellish, right? Except it's not about Christmas trees at all. Here's what's actually going on. Jeremiah is describing the creation of wooden idols, not holiday decorations. In ancient times, pagans would often carve idols out of wood, overlay them with these precious metals, and bow down to worship them as gods. Now, there are other aspects to this that have to do with demonology and Nephilim and the fact that these spirits could actually dwell within these gods and do things for these people, or they wouldn't have bothered. But really, this has nothing to do with putting up a pine tree in your living room and hanging some tinsel on it. So really, the bottom line is, unless you're bowing down and praying to your Christmas tree or some god associated with it outside of Jesus Christ, let's be real. No one's doing this. The verse doesn't even apply, given that knowledge. And then we have Deuteronomy. Do not inquire about their gods. So what does that mean? Well, it's another popular one. Essentially what it means is don't adopt pagan practices. Some people argue that having any tradition resembling something pagan, or doing anything pagans used to do, is like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. Gift giving for trees, It means they're guilty of adopting their practices. But let's kind of unpack this, okay? Because, man, we could do this about so many things. You wouldn't even be able to step out your door without these Karens assaulting you about everything you say and do. I mean, your car, if it's got a symbol of a god on it. Anyway, Deuteronomy 12 warns Israel not to worship God in the same way pagans worship their gods. It's about the manner of worship, not about accidentally doing something that vaguely resembles a pagan custom. For example, pagans sing songs to their gods. But that doesn't mean that a Christian should never sing a song or should avoid singing hymns. Don't you think the key difference here is your intent? Does that matter at all? Does it matter? I mean, Christians aren't worshiping false gods with their tree gifts or with their trees or gift giving. They're celebrating Christ's birth. And I got to think that's got to be a pretty big difference, right? Shouldn't that make a difference? I think it does. So then we move on to 1 Corinthians, chapter 10, verses 20 and 21, where you can't partake of the table of the Lord and the table of demons. So critics love this verse, claiming that by celebrating Christmas with these pagan traditions, we're somehow participating in demonic practices. Context is everything here. In 1 Corinthians, Paul is warning believers not to eat food sacrificed to idols as part of idol worship. The principle here is to avoid activities that directly honor false gods. But again, Christmas traditions like decorating a tree or exchanging gifts, aren't tied to idol worship. So unless your Christmas dinner involves, sacrificing a turkey to Odin, I don't really believe this verse applies to you. Maybe some of you are. Maybe some of you are gutting your turkey and spreading the entrails out, and I don't know how the Norse worshipped Odin, but if that's what you're doing, it's clearly not a Christian practice. So stop it, unless you don't want to be a Christian. Those who want to celebrate Christianity-based Christmas for what the holiday is without having a bunch of people chomping at the bit to Karenize them about everything they do. So, we also have Matthew 15:3, where it says, "You break the commandment of God for the sake of your tradition." That one's another one. It's used to argue that all traditions are bad. But here's the problem. Jesus isn't condemning traditions themselves. He's condemning traditions that violate God's commands. The Pharisees were twisting traditions to override God's laws. The Christmas traditions don't do that. In fact, most or many of Christian Christmas practices like generosity, family gatherings, and worship and singing hymns align beautifully with Christian values. I don't know. I'm very fond of Christmas, so maybe I am biased, but it makes sense to me. It's logical to me. In Isaiah 44, it's another one about the trees. I've literally had this one used with me before. It's Isaiah 44 verses 14 through 17. It's another one that critics use against Christmas trees. The passage, much like Jeremiah 10, describes idol worship, taking a tree, carving it into a god, bowing down to it. So if you're not carving your Christmas tree into a graven image and lighting candles to it, worshiping it, this verse simply doesn't apply. Putting lights and ornaments on a tree is no more idolatrous than wearing a cross necklace. It's a decoration. It's not an object of worship. Are you expecting the spirit or demon or God that you're worshiping in that tree to do something for you as a result? No. I've never done that my whole life, and neither of you. So don't listen to them. Shrug it off. Move on. So here's the thing. The Bible repeatedly warns against idolatry and worshiping false gods, but none of these verses condemn having a tree, giving gifts, or celebrating special days as long as your intent is to glorify God. So the key question then is this, right? Why are you celebrating it? If your focus is on Christ, his birth, his love, and his gift of salvation, then your Christmas traditions are honoring God, not pagan gods. So the next time someone tries to use Scripture to guilt trip you out of celebrating Christmas, remember this: context matters. These verses don't apply to Christmas traditions unless you're actively worshiping idols or engaging in sinful practices while doing it. So instead of tearing down your traditions, just let's use them to point people to Jesus, the true reason for the season, right? That's what it's about. Don't be fearful of these people. Just point them to Jesus. Anyways, now that we've cleared that up and addressed some of the traditions and set the record straight on some of these most commonly misused Bible verses, let's talk about how we Christians approach Christmas. That's coming up next. Before we do that, I should probably let you know that the guitar work that you're hearing and some of the music that you're hearing in between sections and at the beginning and end of this were put together by myself in my studio, same studio that I've been recording my guitar tracks for our upcoming album for our band, Pilgrims Grey, and our upcoming album called Elevensies. We're all Tolkien fans, and so the album has to do with a figure called the Grey Wanderer, and it's a behind-the-scene look he's given behind the veil as to what's going on in the universe with this rebellion from the sons of God and how it affects this planet from the antediluvian world all the way up to today, which is exactly what my channel is about. And so all the songs kind of have to deal with that. And anyway, I hope you're enjoying it. I just tried to do something Christmassy. I didn't want to do anything that would violate copyright stuff, so I was just playing something as Christmassy sounding as I could think of on the guitar, just jamming a bit. And anyway, I hope it helps to enhance this whole Christmas video that you're getting to listen to that deals with you just being able to enjoy your Christmas without being Karen to death by everybody who wants to tell you that every time you turn around, you're being a pagan because you're celebrating Christmas, and oh my gosh, you're doing it on the 25th of December, so you're stupid. So let's continue then and help you to be able to enjoy your Christmas and celebrating it on the 25th. So we've heard the arguments against a holiday and how they're supposedly about history, but really they're not. Sometimes this stuff is theological based. Some folks will say, even if it's not pagan, why celebrate it at all when we don't know the exact date of Jesus' birth? Well, I guess that's kind of a fair question. There's a lot of people that believe that Jesus was born on or around September 11th, and I get that, but that could also mean that he was conceived somewhere around December the 20th, right? Because roughly 9 months later would be September 11th. I don't know. Just kind of thinking out loud on that one. Anyway, I don't know how you guys feel about some of this stuff, but does it really matter? As far as all that goes, first off, let's just address the elephant or maybe the nativative donkey in the room. We don't know the exact date of Jesus' birth, and guess what? That's okay. It's okay. Now, the Bible doesn't really give us a date because it's not the when that matters, it's the what. What matters is that God stepped into history, took on human flesh, and brought salvation to the world. That's really what it's all about. But if we're going to celebrate, and I'd argue we absolutely should, why not December the 25th? The date was chosen based on theological reasoning, as we've already kind of discussed, and it's been celebrated by Christians for nearly 1,800 years. That's a pretty good track record. So if it's good enough for the early church, it's good enough for us, right? Anyway, plus, think about it this way. If we wait until we know the exact date of Jesus' birth to celebrate it, we'll be waiting until eternity. In the meantime, December 25th gives us a set time to reflect on the miracle of the Incarnation, and that's worth celebrating. So what about the commercialism? I know that's what a lot of people say. It's so commercialized. I can't in good conscience as a Christian do it. Well, don't get into the commercialism. The Christmas is too commercialized argument. Look, I get it. The Black Friday stampedes and endless ads for stuff we don't really need. It can make the holiday feel a little off. But here's the thing. The commercialization of Christmas doesn't invalidate its true meaning if you don't want it to. If anything, it gives us an opportunity to refocus, right? Right? As Christians, we can reclaim the holiday by emphasizing generosity, love, worship, instead of getting swept up in the frenzy of consumerism. And we can use Christmas as a chance to show Christ's love to others, whether that's through giving meaningful gifts or spending time with loved ones or reaching out to those in need. It doesn't have to be store-bought gifts. Bake something for somebody from the heart that they love. They love your pecan pie. Bake it. Make it. Serve it. The world may have turned Christmas into a shopping spree, but we don't have to play along, do we? Right? I choose to, but I don't get stressed about it, I just buy things happily for people, and I try to make them thoughtful. I don't overdo it. It's not like I'm going out buying a Mercedes, which I think is a ridiculous commercial to advertise to us on national TV. I know there are people that can go out there and buy a Mercedes for their loved ones, but most of us can't. So it kind of feels like a stomp on the toes. But really, who cares? In the end, stuff doesn't make you happy. It kind of brightens up a child's life, and it's good to get them things that they can play with that are challenging their minds or making them think, So, and then we have to deal with the fact that traditions being just a distraction, right? Some people argue that all the traditions, trees, stocking, Santa, they're just distractions from the real meaning of Christmas. But here's the thing. Traditions are only distractions if you let them be. When you use them intentionally, they can actually point us to Christ again. You take the Christmas tree, for example. Its evergreen nature reminds us of eternal life through Jesus. The lights can symbolize the light of Christ shining in a dark world. Even gift giving, when done with a heart of generosity, reflects God's ultimate gift to us, right? I mean, the key is to keep Christ at the center of our celebrations, using traditions as tools to honor him. So just keep that in the back of your head and remember that we're supposed to be doing all things, to glorify him anyway, right? I mean, so just happily celebrate without all these fears, So what does the Bible say about special days? Because that's another one. Jehovah's Witnesses bring that up a lot, that kind of a thing. So let's turn to Scripture for a moment. In Romans 14:5-6, it says, one person considers one day more sacred than another. Another considers every day alike. Each of them should be fully convinced in their own mind. Whoever regards one day as special does so to the Lord. In other words, if you choose to celebrate Christmas or birthdays or whatever, do it to honor God. And if you choose not to do it, well, fine. That's okay too, as long as your decision is made out of conviction and not a desire to condemn others. So you live your conviction, but don't be a Karen to everybody else, It's because you don't want to do it, doesn't mean that it's wrong for somebody else to properly recognize the birth of Christ in their own heart. So I'm not saying that you are. I'm just saying don't. Anyway, the bottom line is that God cares more about the state of your heart than the specifics of our celebrations. And that isn't, when I say that, I'm not saying that he doesn't care about sinful things. So please don't go there. So whether you're singing carols, you're hanging stockings, or simply reflecting on the miracle of Christ's birth, what matters is that you're doing it to his glory. So, again, to address the Karens of Christmas a final time here, if you don't want to celebrate Christmas, really, it's your choice. But could we stop raining on everyone else's parade? I mean, there's nothing biblical or Christ-like about using bad history or misapplied scripture to guilt trip people into abandoning a joyful, Christ-centered celebration, is there? I mean, didn't Christ reserve his harshest words for people that were just making life miserable for everybody because they were judging and just being ridiculous Karens to everyone? These people who were like, no, we have to obey the law to the very dotted I and T. And then Jesus had to point out, yeah, but you know what? When your donkey falls in a ditch or a well, don't you guys on the Sabbath go ahead and drag it out? Yeah, that's what I thought. Exactly. So, why does Christmas even matter? At the end of the day, Christmas is about one thing, Jesus. That's it. It's about celebrating the moment when God entered our broken world to save us. How many hymns have to be written for us to get that, right? I mean, or Christmas carols, I guess, not necessarily hymns, but hymns too. Whether you're sitting by a decorated tree or simply reading the nativity story with your family, that's in Luke chapter 2 for those who aren't aware. If you want to read it to your family, it's a great idea to introduce kids to the God of the universe coming in the flesh because he loves them. So Christmas gives us a chance to pause, reflect, and rejoice in the greatest gift we've ever been given. So light the candles, sing the carols, celebrate with joy, because Christmas isn't just a holiday, it's a reminder of the hope, peace, and love that came into the world through Christ. And that is worth celebrating, right? If nothing else. You couldn't have a pot to pee in, but you have that gift, and it's for everyone who will receive it. Everyone. Anybody willing to receive it gets that gift. And so let's move on to part 5 and fear. So why fear has no place in Christmas? Well, let's address something that often creeps into the conversation. Fear of accidentally celebrating something pagan, fear of offending God by putting up a tree or hanging stockings, fear of what others might say if we embrace Christmas traditions. But here's the truth. Fear has no place in the life of a Christian, really, period. I mean, outside of fear of the Lord. And we know that's not the same kind of fear. We're talking about reverential, respecting love for the creator of the universe and the God that loves us and brought us into this world. So, let's start with a question. Why can't we reclaim something for Jesus? I mean, after all, isn't that what Christianity's been doing for 2,000 years? I mean, the Apostle Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 10:26, if you want to look it up, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Everything belongs to God. If there's a tradition, a day, or even an object that has been misused in the past, why can't it be redeemed and given a Christ-centered meaning? Is that so horrible? I mean, In fact, isn't that exactly what Jesus did with us? I mean, if we were these days or whatever, instead of humans, I mean, he took broken, sinful humanity, redeemed us, transformed us into his people. Now, if he can do that with us, why should we think he can't do the same with a holiday? Right? I mean, he can do anything. Well, I should say anything that is logically possible. So, what about Romans 8:15? I've heard this one said too. The Bible is clear. Quote, "For you did not receive a spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption as sons, by whom we cry, Abba, Father." Right? Romans 8:15. Fear of accidentally celebrating something pagan is rooted in a mindset of bondage, not freedom. So stop it. You have a spirit of power. As children of God, we are called to walk in freedom and confidence, not anxiety or, over whether our traditions might have been misused centuries ago. I mean, look, even if it were pagan, so what? Here's a thought experiment. Let's say for argument's sake that December the 25th was originally a pagan holiday. Does that mean Christians today are worshiping pagan gods when we celebrate Christmas? Of course not. Intent matters. If our focus is on Jesus, his birth, his love, and his gift of salvation, then our celebration is honoring him, regardless of what someone else did that day hundreds or even thousands of years ago. So consider this. The days of the week are named after pagan gods, right? Does that mean that you're worshiping Thor every Thursday when you use the word Thursday? Because no one today associates Thursday with a Norse deity. Now, the same principle applies here. A date of tradition doesn't carry pagan meaning unless we actively give it that meaning, so stop doing it. And Christians celebrating Christmas certainly are not doing that. So anyway, and let's remember God's power over the enemy. God is infinitely more powerful than any false god or pagan tradition. Colossians 2:15 tells us that Christ has disarmed the rulers and authorities, triumphing over them on the cross. The enemy has no claim on anything. Not on creation, not on us, and certainly not on a day like December 25th, right? Can you hear the guitars in the background? You think they're complaining about December the 25th and it being pagan? No. They just like vibrating their strings and making pleasant sounds for you. I don't know why I included that, but I hope you're enjoying the guitar work. So if anything, celebrating Christmas boldly and joyfully is a way to declare victory over the lies of the enemy, right? We're not bound by fear, and we're not afraid to reclaim and redeem for Christ's glory what others may have twisted, right? We're not responsible for the actions of others. So don't give into it at all. You can rejoice without fear. So anyway, fear isn't from God. Remember, Paul writes in 2 Timothy 1:7, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but power and love and self-control." So when we approach Christmas, let's do it with that spirit. The power to reclaim it, love to share with others, and self-control to focus our hearts on Christ. So, celebrate without fear. That's what I say. And here's the takeaway. If you're celebrating on December the 25th, putting up a tree or singing carols, don't let fear steal your joy. Remember that everything we do as Christians should be done in freedom, faith, and thanksgiving to God. God is a God of freedom. He's freeing, liberty. Christmas is a time to rejoice, to reflect on the miracle of Christ's birth. You remember the angels? They weren't like, let's announce the birth, but let's not do it too loud. Pagans might, whatever. I mean, they apparently sang loud enough to scare shepherds in a field. So anyway, it's about proclaiming his love to the world, and that is definitely worth fearlessly celebrating. So anyway, there you have it. We've pretty much journeyed through history, tackled myths, unpacked traditions, and even confronted misused Bible verses. Hopefully by now you're armed with the facts, a little extra confidence. If you can't remember them, if you go into my post, I have this entire article posted somewhere. If not, just look at the comments section under the description of this video, because I will post it there so you can reference dates, quotes, whatever you need to, because I know I don't always remember things that I hear. I need to hear and read. So you're welcome to reference in the description. Like I said, I'll include this. And remember, again, it's always been about Christ. It's about God stepping into our world, becoming one of us, bringing salvation through his Son. That's the heart of this holiday, no matter what anybody says about trees, dates, or traditions. You know, if we've learned anything, it's this. Fear's got no place in Christmas. Whether it's the fear of accidental paganism or the fear of judgment from others, don't let it steal your joy. Focus on what truly matters, the miracle of the incarnation, the love of God, and the hope that we have through Jesus, right? I mean, that's it. So, anyway, the next time someone tries to rain on your Christmas parade with claims of pagan roots, misuse Bible verses, or bad history, now you'll be ready. When you're at the party, you can quote Hippolytus and, let them know that we've been celebrating this date since right around 200 AD. You'll have the knowledge and the confidence to, gently but firmly set the record straight. And more important, you'll know in your heart that your celebration is honoring God. So I'm going to close this out and let me leave you with this. Whether you celebrate with stockings and trees or quietly reflect on the nativity, just let your heart be filled with the peace, love, and joy that Christmas represents. Now, the season is a reminder of God's overwhelming love for us, a love that was so great that he came to dwell among us. So this Christmas, let's focus on him, let's celebrate his birth with grateful hearts, and let's share his light with a world that obviously desperately needs it. Have you seen it lately? I don't even like watching the news anymore, do you? It's very discouraging. So, Merry Christmas, and may God richly bless you and your entire family this season. And now, you just go out, have some cocoa, sing a carol or two, whatever your traditions are, and don't forget to wish those Karens of Christmas a joyful Merry Christmas too. Who knows? Just maybe one of them will come around, right? Nah, who we kidding? Anyway, enjoy it. Love y'all. Godspeed. And I'm going to keep recording my voice. And hopefully we will start doing the podcast by the end of January. Until then, I will try to have a weekly update on some news stories. I haven't decided whether to do 3 or 7 a week. But that's what I'm going to do to keep you updated on what's going on out there in the world as we celebrate season. Sorry about that. I accidentally cut myself off on the mic. Wonderful. That is the wonder of being so busy and trying to record on the fly. But it is what it is. Also, one other thing I wanted to let you know is for Christmas, I know that I'm getting a more expensive studio mic and some other studio gear that will make the podcast better, because I know this current mic isn't the greatest in the world. I am trying and coping, and I hope you can bear with it until I get a better microphone so we can do some better, make sure that the podcast is good quality. And again, I would put the word out there. If you know somebody you'd like to hear interviewed, or you want to be a guest, the topic is the Seed War. There's lots associated with it. Everything from the 24-hour Antarctic venture that just occurred, because we know that the whole globe thing is a deception that'll be utilized in the last days to, you can go watch my videos. You know where I stand on that. I don't want to get too far into it because this video is about Christmas. So anyway, you all enjoy your Christmas season. I am out of here. Probably won't do a whole lot between now and the first of the year because I still also work a job 50 to 60 hours a week. And it's hard to find time to get all this stuff done. But I'm happy to do it because I like sharing what I know. Again, I'm not always right. And I'm always willing to learn or have discussions with people. I know that there will probably be some who will comment on the September 11th date. I'm open to that. I'm just only concentrating on the 25th of December because of the Karens out there. The Sol Invictus thing is dead wrong, regardless of what actual date Jesus was born on, whether it's the 25th or September 11th. It's definitely not a copycat of paganism. If anything, it's the other way around. So, Merry Christmas, and I'm going to let my guitar work play it out. If you like it, let me know. I love feedback. I need to know what you like, to keep you around, because I like subscribers. So if you like the content, please subscribe. I will keep you updated, and it's good to be updated and know what's going on in the world, and how it affects you spiritually and physically. Anyway, again, Merry Christmas. Love y'all. Bye.